I am Bridget Parker, 29 years old, and sometimes I still hear those words echoing in my head. No one wants you here. My father said it with such conviction, while my mother just stood there silently agreeing. That night, I packed my bags and left. Seattle determined to build a new life in Portland as a graphic designer. My brother Tyler was always their golden child. I was just the disappointment. If you are watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you are from. Hit that like button and subscribe to see how 8 missed calls changed everything between us. Growing up in our middle-class neighborhood in Seattle, our family looked perfect from the outside. Our 2-story colonial with the white picket fence and neatly trimmed lawn gave no hints of the dynamics brewing within. My father, Harold Parker, worked as a bank manager. He ran our home with the same rigid structure he applied at work, complete with high expectations and little room for error. Dad had very specific ideas about how things should be done. Dinner was at 6 sharp. Homework came before television. Beds were to be made every morning without exception. Rules were rules, and breaking them meant consequences. At least that was true for me. My mother, Amanda, was sweet but passive. She taught 3rd grade at the local elementary school and was beloved by her students for her gentle nature. At home, though, she rarely contradicted my father. When he raised his voice at me, she would wince but stay silent. When he dismissed my achievements, she would give me a sympathetic glance but never speak up. Then there was Tyler, my brother, 4 years younger than me. From the day my parents brought him home from the hospital when I was 4, something shifted in our family. Tyler became the center of their universe. While I had been told to be quiet and not disturb my father after work, Tyler could run screaming through the house and receive nothing but indulgent smiles. The preferential treatment was subtle at first, but grew more obvious as we got older. When I brought home straight. As in 5th grade, my father glanced at my report card and said, "That is what we expect." When Tyler brought home B's and C's in the same grade years later, there were celebrations and ice cream. His mediocrity was praised while my excellence was considered the baseline. I still remember my 10th birthday when I asked for art supplies. My father frowned and said, "Art is not going to get you anywhere in life, Bridget. Focus on something practical." But when Tyler wanted an expensive gaming console for his birthday, my father worked overtime for weeks to afford it. "Your brother needs to unwind," he said. "He works so hard." My artistic talents were always an afterthought in our family. I would spend hours drawing in my room, creating worlds and characters that felt more real to me than my actual life. My bedroom walls were covered with my artwork, but my parents rarely commented on them. During parent-teacher conferences, when my art teacher, Mrs. Wilson, would rave about my potential, my parents would nod politely but change the subject to my math grades. The only person who truly saw me was my grandmother Eleanor, my mother's mother. She lived just 20 minutes away, and I would bike to her house whenever I could. Grandma Eleanor had been an art teacher before retiring, and she recognized something in me that my parents missed. "You have a gift, Bridget," she would tell me, examining my latest sketch. Her living room walls displayed my artwork prominently, something my parents never did. She bought me proper sketchbooks, quality pencils, and even took me to art museums on weekends. In her small sunlit kitchen over homemade cookies and lemonade, she taught me that creativity was valuable. Those afternoons at Grandma Eleanor's house were like stepping into another world where I mattered. She would listen to my stories about school, ask about my dreams, and never once compared me to Tyler. When I told her I wanted to be an artist someday, she nodded seriously and said, "You absolutely will be, dear. I can see it." When I was 16, Grandma Eleanor passed away suddenly from a heart attack. I lost the one person who had been my cheerleader, my confidant, my ally. At her funeral, I stood stiffly between my parents, feeling more alone than ever. My mother cried quietly, but my father seemed impatient to get through the service. Tyler was allowed to skip the funeral because it was too upsetting for him. I had to go despite being devastated. High school became my countdown to freedom. I threw myself into academics and extracurricular activities, building a resume that would get me far away from home. I joined the yearbook committee as their lead designer, took advanced placement art classes, and maintained a perfect grade point average. My guidance counselor, Mr. Phillips, noticed my determination and helped me apply for scholarships. "You are going places, Bridget," he told me during our college counseling session. "Your portfolio is impressive." Meanwhile, at home, Tyler was struggling through high school with C's and D's, but my parents hired tutors and made excuses. "He is just not academically inclined," my mother would say. "But he has such people skills." The contrast was stark and painful. While Tyler got a car for his 16th birthday, despite failing 2 classes, I took the bus to my part-time job at the local coffee shop to save money for college. While my curfew was strictly enforced, Tyler would stroll in hours late with barely a word from our father. By senior year, I had one goal: get out and never look back. Every scholarship application, every college essay, every late-night study session was fueled by the promise of escape. I applied to colleges at least 300 miles away, calculating the perfect distance to justify not coming home for weekend visits. When the acceptance letters started arriving, I hid them from my parents, at first savoring the private victory. I had done this on my own without their encouragement or support. This achievement was mine alone, and for once I wanted to enjoy it without seeing the indifference in their eyes. The day I received my full scholarship to the University of Oregon was the day I finally felt like my hard work had paid off. The thick envelope contained my ticket to freedom, a full ride for their graphic design program. I stood in the driveway holding the letter with shaking hands, allowing myself a moment of pure, untainted joy before walking inside to share the news. At dinner that night, I waited until everyone was seated before making my announcement. "I got a full scholarship to University of Oregon," I said, unable to keep the pride from my voice. "For graphic design?" My father paused with his fork halfway to his mouth. "Oregon. That is pretty far." There was no congratulations, no celebration. My mother gave me a small smile but quickly looked down at her plate. "Will they let you switch to business once you are there?" my father asked. "That art stuff is fine as a hobby, but you need something practical." Before I could respond, Tyler burst through the front door 45 minutes late for dinner. "Sorry I am late," he announced, dropping his backpack on the floor. "Coach kept us for extra practice." My mother immediately stood up. "I will heat up your plate, honey." The conversation about my scholarship was forgotten as my parents asked Tyler about his day, his football practice, his weekend plans. I sat there, my news pushed aside yet again, feeling invisible at my own dinner table. That fall, I packed my car with everything I owned and headed to Eugene, Oregon. My mother hugged me goodbye with tears in her eyes, but my father gave me a brief pat on the shoulder and reminded me to change my oil regularly. Tyler was still asleep when I left. The 4-hour drive to campus was filled with a mixture of anxiety and elation. For the first time, I was completely on my own, free to make my own decisions without judgment or comparison. As the Seattle skyline disappeared in my rearview mirror, I felt like I could finally breathe. College was everything I had hoped for and more. My roommate Jessica Thompson was a journalism major with a loud laugh and boundless energy. Within our first week together, she had dragged me to 3 different campus clubs, 2 parties, and a midnight movie marathon. She was the opposite of my reserved nature, but somehow we clicked immediately. Our dorm room quickly became a sanctuary. I hung my artwork on the walls without fear of criticism, stayed up late working on designs without being told I was wasting my time, and for the first time felt proud of my talents rather than apologetic. In my introductory design classes, professors praised my work. My skills honed through years of private practice in my bedroom put me ahead of many of my classmates. Professor Garcia, my digital media instructor, even asked if she could keep one of my projects to show future students as an example. "This is exceptional work, Bridget," she said. "You have a natural eye for composition." I made friends who shared my interests. Jessica introduced me to Kimberly Chen, an architecture student who lived down the hall. The 3 of us became inseparable, spending weekends exploring Eugene, studying together in the library until closing time, and having deep conversations about our dreams and ambitions. Going home for Thanksgiving that first year was jarring. The house that had once felt like a prison now seemed smaller somehow. My bedroom remained exactly as I had left it, like a museum exhibit of my former life. At dinner, my parents asked surface-level questions about my classes, but perked up noticeably when the conversation turned to Tyler's football season. "He might get scouted by state," my father said proudly. His coach thinks he has real potential. Tyler, now a high school senior, basked in the attention. When I mentioned that one of my designs had been selected for the university's promotional materials, my mother said, "That is nice, dear," before asking Tyler to pass the potatoes. It was during this visit that I first noticed the changes in my brother. There was a new edge to him, a slight slur to his words at dinner that suggested he had been drinking before coming to the table. When I passed his room, I caught the unmistakable smell of marijuana seeping from under his door. Our parents either did not notice or chose to ignore it. The pattern continued through my college years. With each visit home, the distance between us grew. Tyler enrolled in the local community college but rarely attended classes. He moved back home because it was convenient, and my parents welcomed him with open arms despite his increasingly concerning behavior. Meanwhile, I flourished in Eugene. By my junior year, I had secured a coveted internship with a Portland design agency. The position was competitive with over 200 applicants for just 3 spots. When I called home to share the news, my mother answered. "That sounds wonderful, Bridget," she said, but then lowered her voice. "Listen, I cannot talk long. Your father and I are dealing with a situation with Tyler. He got caught with alcohol in his car, but your father is talking to his friend at the police department. I have to go help with dinner. We will talk soon." I have to. The line went dead before I could respond. My achievement once again took a back seat to Tyler's problems. During my senior year, I made the decision to limit my visits home even further. Each trip left me feeling drained and diminished. Instead, I spent holidays with Jessica's family, who welcomed me warmly, or with Kimberly, whose parents treated me like a second daughter. I focused on building my portfolio and networking with industry professionals. Professor Garcia connected me with alumni working in agencies across the Pacific Northwest. I attended design conferences, entered competitions, and immersed myself in preparing for a career that my father dismissed as impractical, but that brought me genuine fulfillment. The spring before graduation, I received an email that changed everything. Luminary Design, one of Portland's most innovative agencies, offered me a full-time position starting immediately after graduation. The salary was generous, the creative team highly respected, and the opportunity exactly what I had been working toward. That night, I called Jessica, who was spending the semester studying abroad in London. "They want me, Jess," I said, still in disbelief. "Luminary actually wants me." "Of course they do, you idiot," she laughed through the phone. "Your work is amazing." "When do you start?" 2 weeks after graduation, I told her. "I need to find an apartment in Portland." "You are finally going to be a real adult with a real job," she teased. "I am so proud of you, Bridge. You deserve this." Her words meant everything to me. Someone was proud of me. Someone believed I deserved success. It was all I had ever wanted to hear. My graduation ceremony fell on a perfect June day. The sky was a brilliant blue and a gentle breeze carried the scent of freshly cut grass across the campus. As I adjusted my cap in the mirror that morning, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of my accomplishment. 4 years of hard work, of proving myself, of building a life on my own terms, had led to this moment. My parents had driven down for the ceremony, arriving just an hour before it was scheduled to begin. They looked out of place in the bustling excitement of campus, my father checking his watch repeatedly, my mother clutching her purse nervously. "We cannot stay long after the ceremony," my father informed me as we walked toward the auditorium. "Tyler has a big football game tomorrow morning, and we need to get back." Tyler had managed to secure a spot on the community college team despite his spotty academic record. It was apparently important enough to cut short their time at my college graduation. I nodded, already numb to the familiar disappointment. What is new? During the ceremony, as I crossed the stage to receive my diploma, I searched the crowd for my parents' faces. They were there politely applauding, but without the enthusiastic cheers and whistles that other families provided for their graduates. When I returned to my seat, I noticed my father checking his phone. Afterward, we went to an early dinner at a restaurant near campus. I had invited Jessica and Kimberly to join us, needing their buffer of support. The conversation was stilted, with my father asking more questions about the drive back to Seattle than about my plans after graduation. Finally, when our entrees arrived, I decided to share my news. I have accepted a job offer, I announced, with Luminary Design in Portland. I start in 2 weeks. Portland, my mother echoed. But that is still so far from home. My father cut into his steak with precision. What does something like that pay? Enough to cover your student loans. I have a full scholarship, Dad, I reminded him. And yes, the salary is very competitive. I will be working with major clients on their branding and digital presence. He made a non-committal noise. Well, at least it is a real job, though I still think you could have done better with a business degree. Jessica kicked me gently under the table, a silent show of support. The conversation might have ended there, another disappointment to add to the collection, but then Tyler chose that moment to text our parents. My father read the message and broke into a wide smile. Great news, he announced. Tyler just told us he is thinking of quitting school to try out for some minor league teams. A scout watched him play last week. That is wonderful, my mother beamed. I stared at them in disbelief. Tyler was considering dropping out of college, something that would have been unthinkable for me to suggest. And they were celebrating. Wait, I said slowly. You are happy that he wants to quit school, with no guarantee of making any team. My father frowned. Your brother has a real talent, Bridget. Not everyone is cut out for academics. So, let me get this straight, I continued, unable to stop myself. When I told you I wanted to pursue art and design, you told me it was impractical and would never pay the bills. But Tyler can drop out to chase a 1 in a million shot at sports, and that is fine. That is different, my father said dismissively. How I pressed. How is it different? The tension at the table was palpable. Kimberly studied her plate intently, while Jessica watched the exchange with wide eyes. Your brother works hard at what he is good at, my father said, his voice rising slightly. He has a passion. And I do not, I countered. I have worked hard my entire life. I graduated with honors today. I landed a job at one of the top design firms on the West Coast. But that is never good enough, is it? You always have to make everything about you, my father snapped. This dinner was supposed to be pleasant. Pleasant? I laughed, the sound brittle. Like all those pleasant family dinners where you and Mom fawned over Tyler while ignoring everything I did. Those were pleasant for you, perhaps. My mother reached across the table. Bridget, please, not here. Then where, Mom, when you have never once stood up for me, not once in 22 years. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. I have had enough of your attitude. We drove all this way for your graduation, and this is how you thank us. Thank you. For what exactly? For showing up late. For planning to leave early for Tyler's game. For dismissing my career. Tell me, what exactly should I be thanking you for? The restaurant had grown quiet around us, other diners trying not to stare at our family drama unfolding. We gave you everything, my father said through clenched teeth. A roof over your head, food, clothing, we paid for your car. I bought my own car, I corrected him. With money from my coffee shop job. The same job I worked while maintaining a 4-point GPA. Meanwhile, Tyler wrecked 2 cars that you replaced without question. My mother began to cry quietly, dabbing at her eyes with her napkin. Jessica reached under the table and squeezed my hand in solidarity. My father stood up abruptly, throwing his napkin onto his half-eaten meal. I knew we should not have come. This is exactly why no one wants to be around you, Bridget. You have always been difficult, always had to make everything harder than it needs to be. I stood up too, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. No, Dad. The problem is not that I am difficult. The problem is that I am not Tyler. The words hung in the air between us. My father's expression shifted from anger to something colder, more final. You know what he said quietly. You are right about one thing. You are not Tyler, and thank God for that. At least he appreciates his family. At least he is not selfish. I gathered my purse, my hands shaking with adrenaline and hurt. Thank you both for coming today. I think we are done here. My father nodded stiffly. Yes, I believe we are. Are you coming, Amanda? My mother looked between us, torn. When she finally stood up to join my father, the last thread of hope I had been clinging to snapped. As they turned to leave, my father delivered the final blow just loud enough for me to hear. "No one wants you here, Bridget. No one ever has." And my mother, my own mother, said nothing. She simply nodded in silence. I did not argue. Later that night, I packed the last of my belongings from my dorm room and loaded them into my car. Jessica offered me her couch until I could move into my new apartment in Portland. I left Eugene that night, driving north with tears blurring the road ahead, determined to build a life where I was wanted, where I mattered. As the miles stretched between me and my family, I made a promise to myself I would never again beg for love from people unwilling to give it freely. Portland welcomed me with open arms. The city, with its quirky neighborhoods, artisan coffee shops, and thriving creative community, felt like the home I had been searching for. Jessica's apartment became my temporary refuge, her couch my bed for 2 weeks while I searched for a place of my own. I found a small studio apartment in the Alberta Arts District, a neighborhood bursting with galleries, murals, and independent boutiques. The space was tiny but filled with natural light, perfect for a fresh start. With my first paycheck from Luminary Design, I bought a second-hand desk, a comfortable bed, and a set of shelves for my art supplies. For the first time, every decision about my living space was entirely my own. My first day at Luminary was a whirlwind of introductions, paperwork, and orientation. The creative director, Alan Bennett, assigned me to a team working on rebranding a local brewery. It was a small project, but an opportunity to prove myself. "We want to see what you can do, Bridget," he said, handing me the client brief. "Show us why we hired you." I threw myself into the work, staying late every night that first week, determined to exceed expectations. When I presented my concepts to the team, the room fell silent for a moment before erupting in approving nods and comments. "This is excellent work for someone just out of school," Alan said. "You have a strong instinct for brand identity." His words validated everything I had been fighting for. Here my talent was recognized. Here I was valued for exactly who I was. As weeks turned into months, I settled into a rhythm. Work became my anchor, a place where I could shine without being compared to anyone else. I made friends with Rachel Garcia, a copywriter who shared my dry sense of humor, and Daniel Wong, a user experience designer who became my lunch buddy. We formed a tight-knit trio, often grabbing drinks after work or exploring Portland's famous food cart scene on weekends. My mother texted occasionally surface-level messages that carefully avoided any meaningful topics. "How is your apartment? Have you tried that famous ice cream place yet? The weather here has been rainy." I responded with equally superficial updates, never mentioning my successes at work or the life I was building. From my father, there was complete silence. He had meant what he said at that restaurant. In his mind, we were done. Through my mother's texts, I learned that Tyler had indeed dropped out of community college. He had not made any sports team but was living at home while figuring things out. She never directly asked for money, but her messages often hinted at financial strain as they supported my brother. "Tyler is going through a rough patch," she wrote once. "Your father is helping him with some legal expenses from a misunderstanding at a bar." I did not ask for details. Their problems were no longer mine to solve. Instead, I focused on establishing boundaries, a concept I learned in my weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Fuller, a compassionate woman with silver-streaked hair and gentle eyes. She helped me process the years of being the unfavored child and the final painful break with my family. "What you experienced was emotional neglect, Bridget," she explained during one session. "Children should never have to earn their parents' love. It should be freely given." Over time, my apartment became a true home. I filled it with plants, artwork, and books. On weekends, I explored my neighborhood, becoming a regular at a local bakery and joining a community art class. I even adopted a cat, a orange tabby I named Vincent after my favorite artist. His purring presence greeted me each evening when I returned from work, making the apartment feel less empty. My social circle expanded beyond work colleagues. Through Rachel, I met Marcus Jackson, a musician who played at local venues. We connected instantly over our shared creative passions, and after several group outings, he asked me on a date. Dating was new territory for me. Growing up, I had been too focused on escape to form many meaningful relationships. College had been about independence and career preparation. Now, at 23, I was finally open to the possibility of connection. Marcus and I dated for 6 months. He was kind and attentive, qualities I had not experienced from the men in my family. He came to my apartment for dinner, brought me coffee when I was working late, and genuinely wanted to hear about my day. Though our relationship eventually ended amicably due to his band's touring schedule, it taught me something valuable: I was worthy of care and attention. After Marcus, there was Ethan Miller, a graphic novelist I met at an industry networking event. Our relationship lasted nearly a year before differences in life goals pulled us apart. Each relationship, even in ending, reinforced that I could be loved for exactly who I was. At work, my efforts did not go unnoticed. Projects that had once seemed challenging became routine as I honed my skills. Clients began to request me specifically for their campaigns. My portfolio grew with each successful project, and my confidence along with it. 3 years after joining Luminary, Alan called me into his office on a Friday afternoon. My stomach tightened with anxiety, old insecurities surfacing despite my professional success. "Bridget," he began, leaning back in his chair. "The Thompson account has been our biggest client for years." I nodded, unsure where this was going. I had been part of the team working on their annual report, but in a supporting role. "They specifically mentioned your work in their feedback," Alan continued. "They loved your approach to visualizing their data, so much so that they want you to lead the creative on their new campaign." I blinked in surprise. "That is their largest campaign of the year." Alan smiled. "Yes, it is. And with that, I am officially promoting you to senior designer. The raise is effective immediately." As I left his office, I felt a surge of vindication. All those years of being told my passion was impractical, all those dismissive comments about art not being a real career, all proved wrong by this moment. That night, I celebrated with Rachel, Daniel, and Marcus, who remained a close friend despite our breakup. We raised glasses in a trendy Portland bar, toasting to my promotion. "To Bridget," Rachel declared, "the most talented designer in Portland and the best friend anyone could ask for." Their genuine happiness for my success filled a space inside me that had been empty for too long. This was what family should feel like, I realized. People who celebrated your wins as if they were their own. Later that evening, slightly buzzed from celebratory cocktails, I checked my phone to find another text from my mother. "Tyler is struggling again," it read. "Your father is very stressed about it all." I put the phone away without responding. Their problems were no longer mine. I had built a life where I was valued, where my success was celebrated rather than minimized. I had found my people, my place, my purpose. As I fell asleep that night in my apartment, with Vincent curled at my feet and the sounds of the city drifting through my open window, I felt something I had rarely experienced growing up: contentment. The desperate need for approval that had driven me for so long had finally begun to fade, replaced by a quiet confidence in my own worth. I was exactly where I belonged, doing exactly what I was meant to do, and I had done it all on my own. The Tuesday morning that changed everything started like any other. My alarm chimed at 6:30 and I dragged myself out of bed, Vincent weaving between my legs as I shuffled to the kitchen to start the coffee maker. Morning sunlight filtered through my apartment windows, casting warm patterns on the hardwood floors. I had an important client meeting at 9, so I laid out my outfit the night before: a charcoal gray blazer over a simple black dress, professional but still creative. The shower steamed up the small bathroom as I mentally rehearsed my presentation points. It was not until I stepped out of the shower wrapped in a towel that I noticed the notifications on my phone. 8 missed calls, 3 from my mother, 2 from my father, the rest from numbers I did not recognize. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. In the 6 years since I had left Seattle, my father had never called me, not once. Whatever prompted these calls must be serious. I sat on the edge of my bed, drops of water from my hair dampening the sheets, and listened to the voicemails in chronological order. The first was from my mother, her voice tight with anxiety. "Bridget, please call me back as soon as you get this. It is about Tyler." The second, also from her 30 minutes later. "Honey, please. We need to talk to you. It is urgent." The third was my father, his gruff voice strained in a way I had never heard before. "Bridget, this is your father. Call us immediately." My heart raced as I continued through the messages. The fourth was from an unfamiliar woman identifying herself as Janet Wilson from the King County Jail. "This is a courtesy call regarding Tyler Parker. He has requested we contact Bridget Parker." The remaining messages grew increasingly desperate, culminating in my mother's tear-filled final plea. "Tyler has been arrested. Bridget. He needs $8,500 for bail. We do not have it. Your father's credit is maxed out from the last time. Please, please call us back." I sat frozen, the towel still wrapped around me, water dripping down my back. Tyler arrested. Bail money. My parents turning to me after 6 years of silence. Part of me wanted to delete the messages and go about my day as if I had never received them. They had made it clear I was not wanted. Why should I rush to help now? But another part, the part that remembered a little boy who once followed me around the house asking me to draw pictures for him, hesitated. Before Tyler became the golden child, before the favoritism twisted our relationship, he had been my little brother who thought I hung the moon. I called my mother back first. "Bridget." "Oh, thank God," she answered on the first ring. Her voice was raw, as if she had been crying for hours. "What happened?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. She launched into a scattered explanation. Tyler had been arrested for driving under the influence and possession of controlled substances. It was not his first offense, which was why the bail was set so high. My parents had exhausted their savings, and credit helping him with previous legal troubles that they had kept from me. "We just do not know what to do," she concluded, her voice breaking. "The public defender says he could face serious time because of the prior offenses." I took a deep breath. "And you need money." There was a pause on the line. "Yes," her small voice finally admitted. "We need $8,500 for his bail. Your father's retirement account is locked and our credit cards are maxed out. We would not ask if there was any other option." 6 years of silence, and now they needed my money. The irony was not lost on me. "Let me think about it," I said finally. "I need to process this." "Please, Bridget," she pleaded. "He is your brother." I ended the call without promising anything, and immediately called Rachel. She answered groggily, clearly having just woken up. "I need your advice," I said then, explained the situation. "Wow," Rachel said when I finished. "That is a lot to dump on you after all this time." "I know," I sighed, finally getting up to get dressed. "I am going to be late for my meeting, but I cannot focus on anything else right now." "What are you thinking?" she asked. "I honestly do not know," I admitted. Part of me wants to tell them to figure it out themselves. They made it clear I was not part of the family anymore. But another part feels guilty, like I should help because I can. I have the money in my savings. Rachel was quiet for a moment. "Bridge, whatever you decide, make sure you are doing it for the right reasons, not because you are hoping it will finally make them see your worth. That validation is never going to come from them." Her words hit hard because they were true. Deep down was I hoping that swooping in to save the day would finally make my parents proud. Would finally make them regret how they had treated me. As I rushed to make it to my meeting, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from a number I did not recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Bridget." The voice was familiar but rougher than I remembered. "Tyler." "Hi," I said, stopping in the middle of the sidewalk. "Are you calling from jail?" "Yeah," he said, sounding exhausted. "They give us phone calls. Mom said she talked to you." "She did." There was an awkward pause. "I need help, sis," he finally said, his voice cracking slightly. "I really messed up this time." The childhood nickname caught me off guard. He had not called me sis since we were kids, before he realized he was the favorite and I was not. "What happened?" I asked, softening despite myself. He gave me a sanitized version of events, downplaying his responsibility and emphasizing how unfair the system was being. It was a familiar pattern, one I recognized from our childhood, when he would break something, and then convince our parents it was not really his fault. "So can you help me out?" he asked when he finished his story. "Just this once. I will pay you back, I swear." "I need to think about it," I told him. "This is a lot, Tyler." "What is there to think about?" His tone shifted from pleading to entitled in an instant. You have a fancy job and no responsibilities. Meanwhile, I am sitting in jail. And that is my fault how I countered my momentary sympathy evaporating. Come on, Bridget. We are family. Funny, I said, my voice cold. That is not what Dad said 6 years ago when he told me no one wanted me around. Tyler was silent for a moment. He was just angry. You know how he gets. Yes, I do know. And I also know that neither you nor Mom stood up for me. That is ancient history, he dismissed. This is now, and I need your help. I will call you back, I said firmly. I have a meeting. I ended the call and continued walking to work, my mind racing. Within 20 minutes, my father called. I let it go to voicemail, unable to face another manipulation attempt before my presentation. His message was predictably self-righteous. Bridget, this is your father. I know we have had our differences, but this is your brother we are talking about. It is time to do the right thing for once in your life. Do the right thing for once in my life. As if I had been the problem all along. As if all my achievements, my hard work, my independence counted for nothing. I somehow made it through my client meeting on autopilot, my professional mask firmly in place despite the turmoil beneath. Afterward, I canceled my other appointments and went home, needing space to think. In my apartment, I sat on my couch with Vincent purring in my lap, weighing my options. I could send the money and be done with it. I could refuse and cut ties completely. Or I could do something else entirely. I called Rachel again. I think I need to go to Seattle, I said when she answered. I need to see them face to face. Are you sure? She asked. That sounds emotionally exhausting. It will be, I agreed, but I need to do this on my terms. Not just sending money from afar while they continue to treat me like an ATM, they suddenly remembered exists. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Do you want me to come with you, moral support? Her offer touched me deeply. This was what real family did. They showed up. No, but thank you, I said. This is something I need to do alone. But maybe you could cat-sit Vincent? Of course, she said immediately. When are you leaving? I looked at my calendar. Tomorrow morning, I decided. I will drive up. After we hung up, I booked a hotel room in downtown Seattle, refusing to stay in my childhood home. Then I called my boss to request 2 personal days, explaining I had a family emergency. As I packed an overnight bag, I realized I was not just going to Seattle to deal with Tyler's bail. I was going to confront years of hurt. Years of being the outsider in my own family. Whatever happened, I would not return to Portland the same person who left. That night, I slept fitfully, dreaming of my father's voice, saying those words that had haunted me for years. No one wants you here, Bridget. No one ever has. But this time in my dream, I did not pack my bags and leave. Instead, I stood my ground and said, "That is your loss, not mine." I woke up at dawn, the dream still vivid, feeling stronger and more resolved than ever. Whatever awaited me in Seattle, I would face it as the successful, independent woman I had become, not the desperate for approval daughter I had once been. The drive to Seattle felt like traveling backward in time. With each mile marker, memories surfaced that I had carefully packed away. The Space Needle appeared on the horizon, and suddenly I was 16 again, desperate to escape the shadow of my golden child brother. I checked into my downtown hotel, first needing a moment to prepare before facing my family. The room was sleek and impersonal, a neutral territory where I could retreat afterward. I changed from my travel clothes into a simple but expensive dress and blazer armor of a sort. My success would be visible but understated. When I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home, I sat in the car for several minutes, gathering my courage. The house looked exactly the same. The lawn meticulously maintained my father's pride and joy. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed my purse and approached the front door. My mother answered my knock, her face lighting up with relief. "Bridget, you came," she said, moving to hug me. I allowed the brief embrace, but did not return it with any warmth. "Yes, I am here. Where is Dad?" "In the living room," she said, leading the way inside. The house smelled the same, a mixture of my mother's floral perfume and the lemon polish she used on the furniture. Family photos lined the hallway, and I noticed with a pang that newer ones had been added in my absence. Tyler's community college graduation, family vacations, holidays. Life had continued without me, as if the family had simply closed ranks and moved on. My father stood as I entered the living room, his hair grayer than I remembered, his posture slightly stooped. For a moment, vulnerability flickered across his face before the familiar stern expression returned. "You took your time getting here," he said by way of greeting. "I have a life and responsibilities in Portland," I replied evenly. "I came as soon as I could arrange it." An awkward silence fell. My mother hovered nervously between us, clearly unsure how to navigate this reunion. "Thank you for coming, Bridget," she finally said. "Can I get you some coffee or tea?" "No thank you," I said, taking a seat in an armchair rather than on the couch beside my father. "I would like to understand the situation with Tyler before we discuss anything else." My father cleared his throat. He made a mistake. "Got caught driving after having a few drinks. The police found some pills in the car that were not his." The familiar excuses made something inside me harden. "Not his pills?" I asked skeptically. "He was holding them for a friend," my mother interjected quickly. I held up a hand. "Stop. I did not drive 3 hours to hear the sanitized version. I want the truth. All of it. Or, I am walking out that door and you can figure this out without me." My father's face reddened, but something in my tone must have convinced him I was serious. He exchanged a glance with my mother, before sighing heavily. This is not the first time, he admitted reluctantly. There have been other incidents. DUIs. Possession. We have been helping him through it. Helping how I pressed. Paying for lawyers, my mother said quietly. Bail money. Rehab once, but he left after 3 days. I took this in pieces, falling into place. So that is why you need money. You have spent everything on Tyler's legal troubles. My father looked away, unwilling to admit the truth aloud. I need to see Tyler, I said firmly. Where is he being held? King County Jail, my mother supplied. Visiting hours start at 1 o'clock and 7. I checked my watch. We had 45 minutes. Then we should leave now. The drive to the jail was silent and tense. I followed my parents in my own car, unwilling to be trapped in a vehicle with them, for even 20 minutes. The facility was gray and imposing a concrete reminder of how far Tyler had fallen. After signing in and going through security, we were led to a visiting area. Tyler appeared in an orange jumpsuit, looking thinner and older than I remembered. His eyes widened in surprise when he saw me. "Bridget, you actually came," he said as he sat across from us at the visitation table. "I did," I replied, studying him. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands slightly shaky. "You look terrible." He attempted a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Nice to see you too, sis." "Cut the act, Tyler," I said bluntly. "I want to hear from you exactly what happened. The real version, not whatever story you have been feeding Mom and Dad." He glanced at our parents, then back at me. "What does it matter? I messed up okay. Are you happy now?" "Happy," I repeated. "Why would I be happy that my brother is in jail?" "Because it proves you were the good one all along, right?" he shot back. Perfect Bridget, with her fancy job and perfect life, while screw-up Tyler lands in jail. I was momentarily taken aback by his bitterness. "Is that really what you think of me?" He shrugged, looking away. "Whatever. Are you going to help or not?" "That depends," I said. "I need to understand what I would be helping with." I told my father I needed to speak with Tyler's lawyer, and arrangements were made for a meeting immediately after visitation. The lawyer, a tired-looking man named Michael Rodriguez, laid out the facts without sugarcoating. "This is Mr. Parker's 3rd DUI, he explained, and the possession charge is serious because of the quantity. We are talking about potential jail time, not just a fine. The $8,500 is just for bail. There will be additional legal fees, probably around $15,000 if we want to mount a proper defense." I absorbed this information, asking pointed questions about Tyler's previous offenses, the evidence in this case, and the likely outcomes. Mr. Rodriguez was refreshingly honest, unlike my family. Given his record, he will almost certainly need to complete a substance abuse program as part of any plea deal, the lawyer concluded. The court is not likely to be lenient this time. After thanking him for his time, I rejoined my parents in the waiting area. We need to talk, I said firmly. Not here, somewhere private. We found a quiet coffee shop a few blocks from the jail. Once we had ordered and were seated in a corner booth, I laid my hands flat on the table and looked directly at my parents. Tyler has a serious problem, I began. This is not just bad luck or being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and from what his lawyer told me, you have been covering up these issues for years. My father started to interrupt, but I held up a hand to stop him. Let me finish. I could write a check right now and walk away, but that would not solve anything. It would just enable Tyler to continue down this destructive path. My mother's eyes filled with tears. He is our son, Bridget. What were we supposed to do? Let him rot in jail. You were supposed to hold him accountable, I said quietly. The same way you always held me accountable for everything. The same way you would never have bailed me out if I had been in this situation? That is different, my father began automatically. Why, I challenged. Why is it different? He looked away, unable to answer. I think I know why, I continued. It is different because Tyler has always been your favorite. You have always made excuses for him, cleaned up his messes, protected him from consequences. And look where that has gotten him. You have no right to judge us, my father said, his voice rising. You left. You have no idea what we have been dealing with. I left because you told me no one wanted me there. I reminded him, my voice steady, despite the pain those words still caused. I left because for my entire life I was held to an impossible standard while Tyler was praised for doing the bare minimum. I left because staying would have broken me. My mother reached across the table, her hand stopping short of touching mine. We never meant to hurt you, Bridget. But you did, I said simply. And now you are hurting Tyler too, just in a different way. By never letting him face consequences, you have taught him that someone will always bail him out literally and figuratively. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red, so you are refusing to help, after we gave you everything. I took a deep breath, centering myself. I am willing to help, but on my terms. Not yours. What terms? My mother asked hesitantly. I will pay Tyler's bail, I said, and I will contribute to his legal defense. But only if he agrees to enter a reputable rehabilitation program immediately after his case is resolved, regardless of the court's decision, and he needs to commit to completing it this time. My father scoffed. He will never agree to that. Then I guess he stays in jail, I said firmly. This is not negotiable. You cannot just dictate terms like this, my father sputtered. Who do you think you are? I am the person you are asking for $8,500. I replied evenly. The person you have not spoken to in 6 years until you needed something. The person who has built a successful life despite being told she was unwanted by her own family. That is who I think I am. The coffee shop fell silent around us. My mother stared at her untouched latte, tears streaming down her face. My father seemed caught between anger and desperation. I am not doing this to punish Tyler, I continued more gently. I am doing it because he needs help. Real help. Not another bailout. And I am doing it because for once in this family, I want my voice to be heard. After a long moment, my mother nodded slowly. I think she is right, Harold, she said quietly. What we have been doing is not working. My father looked at her in surprise, then back at me. His expression shifted, something new, flickering across his features. It might have been respect or perhaps just resignation. Fine, he finally said. We will talk to Tyler about your conditions. Good, I replied, gathering my purse. I am staying at the Marriott downtown. Let me know what he decides. I will be here until tomorrow afternoon. As I stood to leave, my mother caught my hand. Bridget, she said, her voice small. Thank you for coming. I nodded, not quite ready to offer forgiveness, but acknowledging the small olive branch. Then I walked out of the coffee shop, my steps lighter than they had been in years. For the first time in my life, I had stood up to my family and held my ground. I had set boundaries and refused to be manipulated. Whatever happened next, I had reclaimed my power in our relationship. and that was worth more than any amount of money. Tyler agreed to my conditions the next morning. Perhaps the reality of jail had finally penetrated his sense of invulnerability. Or maybe he simply had no other options. Either way, when I received the call from my mother, her voice trembling with relief, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Satisfaction that I had stood my ground. Hope that Tyler might finally get the help he needed. And a lingering sadness for all the years of pain that had led us here. I met with the bail bondsman that afternoon, signing paperwork and transferring funds from my savings account. The process was impersonal and efficient. A business transaction with life-altering consequences. By evening, Tyler was released into our parents' custody with strict conditions about his movements until his court date. My mother insisted on a family dinner at home, her way of trying to normalize an inherently abnormal situation. I agreed, though. I maintained my distance by driving separately and making it clear I would return to my hotel afterward. The dinner was tense but civil. Tyler, freshly showered and wearing clean clothes, looked more like himself than he had in the jail visiting room. He sat across from me at the dining table where we had shared hundreds of meals in a previous life. "Thanks for helping me out," he said, studying his plate rather than meeting my eyes. "I know you did not have to." No, I did not. I agreed, serving myself a portion of my mother's lasagna, a recipe unchanged since my childhood, but I hope it helps you turn things around. Tyler nodded without responding. My father cleared his throat awkwardly. "We have been researching rehabilitation programs," he announced. "There is a good one in Bellevue. 90 days, very structured." I raised an eyebrow, surprised by his proactive approach. "That sounds promising." The conversation lurched forward in fits, and starts everyone carefully avoiding the deeper issues that had fractured our family. We discussed safe topics, the weather, my mother's garden, changes in the neighborhood. It was superficial but oddly comforting, like wearing an old sweater that no longer quite fits but remains familiar. After dinner, as my mother cleared plates and my father retreated to the living room, I found myself alone with Tyler in the kitchen. "Do you hate me?" he asked suddenly, his voice low enough that our parents could not hear. The question caught me off guard. "No, Tyler, I do not hate you." He nodded absently, running a finger along the counter edge. "I would hate me if I were you." I leaned against the refrigerator, studying my brother. The golden child, tarnished by his own choices, yet still somehow expecting understanding. It would have been easy to feel vindicated by his fall, but instead I felt only sadness. "I do not hate you," I repeated. "But I do not know you anymore. We have not had a real conversation in years." He looked up, then meeting my eyes properly for the first time. "I was jealous of you, you know." "Jealous?" I echoed in disbelief. "Of me, you were the favorite." "Yeah, I was," he acknowledged with a half-smile. "But you were the strong one. You knew who you were. You had goals and worked for them. I just had Mom and Dad making excuses for me." His self-awareness surprised me. I had always assumed he was oblivious to the family dynamics, happily accepting his privileged position without question. "When did you figure that out?" I asked. He shrugged. "Jail gives you time to think. That and the fact that my big sister, who our parents basically disowned, is the one bailing me out. Kind of puts things in perspective." I did not know how to respond to this new reflective version of my brother. Part of me was suspicious, wondering if this was another manipulation tactic. But his eyes held a clarity I had not seen before. "I hope the rehab program helps," I said finally. "I mean that sincerely." He nodded, looking away again. "Me too." The next morning, I packed my hotel room and prepared for the drive back to Portland. Before leaving, I met with my parents one last time. We sat in their living room, the scene of so many childhood memories, both good and painful. "I have transferred the money for Tyler's bail," I said. "And I have set aside funds for his legal defense and rehabilitation program. But there are conditions." I pulled out a document I had drafted the night before, laying out exactly what I would and would not pay for, and the expectations I had for Tyler's recovery journey. "I am not doing this to control him," I explained as my parents reviewed the paper. "I am doing it to ensure the money actually helps him get better, not just get out of trouble temporarily." My father studied the document with the careful attention he had never given my childhood achievements. His jaw worked as if he was chewing on words he wanted to say but was holding back. "This is very thoughtful," my mother said, filling the silence. "Very organized." I watched them, these people who had shaped me in ways both intentional and unintentional. My mother always seeking peace at any cost. My father, whose approval I had craved for so long. They seemed smaller, somehow more human, less the towering figures of my childhood memories. "I will be checking in regularly about Tyler's progress," I said, "and I expect honesty, not the sanitized version you think I want to hear." My father looked up from the paper. "You have changed, Bridget." It was not a compliment exactly, but not a criticism either, just an observation. "Yes, I have," I agreed. "Portland has been good for me." He nodded, then cleared his throat. "I may have been wrong about that art degree of yours. Seems to have worked out." Coming from him, this was the closest thing to an apology I would likely ever receive. I accepted it for what it was, a small acknowledgement of my path. As I prepared to leave, my mother walked me to the door. At the threshold, she hesitated, then reached out to touch my arm. "I should have stood up for you," she said softly. "All those years ago and again at your graduation. I should have said something when your father told you no one wanted you here. Because it was not true. I always wanted you." Her words unlocked something in my chest, a tight knot of pain I had carried for so long I had almost forgotten it was there. "Why did not you say so?" then I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked down, shame coloring her features. "I was weak. I was afraid of your father's anger. It was easier to focus on Tyler because he needed more help. Or that is what I told myself." She met my eyes again, hers swimming with tears. "I am so sorry, Bridget. I know it is too late, but I am sorry." I stood there, one foot literally out the door, caught between the past and the future. Part of me wanted to cling to the hurt, the righteous anger that had fueled me for years. But another part recognized the courage it took for her to acknowledge her failure, however belatedly. "It is not too late to start doing better," I said finally. "For Tyler and for our relationship." She nodded, wiping away tears. "I would like that." The drive back to Portland gave me time to process the whirlwind of the past 2 days. As the Washington countryside gave way to Oregon, I felt a weight lifting. Not because everything was resolved. Not because my family had suddenly become the supportive unit I had always craved. But because I had faced them on my own terms. I had set boundaries and held them. I had offered help without sacrificing my self-respect. Rachel was waiting at my apartment with pizza and wine, Vincent purring contentedly in her lap. I hugged her, fiercely grateful beyond words for her steady friendship. "How did it go?" she asked as we settled on my couch. "As bad as you feared?" I considered the question. "Not as bad, actually. Different. I think something shifted. For all of us." Over the next 6 months, those shifts continued to play out. Tyler completed his court-mandated community service and entered the rehabilitation program as agreed. Our weekly phone check-ins started awkwardly but gradually evolved into real conversations. For the first time, we began to know each other as adults, without our parents' dynamic coloring every interaction. My father remained. My father too proud to offer the full apology I deserved, but small changes in his behavior spoke volumes. He asked questions about my work, actually listening to the answers. He forwarded articles about graphic design that he thought might interest me, baby steps from a man who had never learned to admit when he was wrong. My mother blossomed in surprising ways. With Tyler in treatment and my father adjusting to a new family dynamic, she seemed to find her voice. She began sending me emails about her day, her thoughts, her regrets. In one particularly moving message, she wrote about how proud my grandmother Eleanor would have been of the woman I had become. That Thanksgiving, 6 months after Tyler's arrest, I drove back to Seattle, this time without dread weighing down the journey. Tyler, now 4 months sober, had moved into a halfway house and was working part-time at a local bookstore. He looked healthier, his eyes clear, his movements more deliberate. We sat around the dining table, the 4 of us together, for the first time in nearly 7 years. The conversation was sometimes stilted, old patterns threatening to re-emerge, but we all seemed committed to trying a new way of relating to each other. Before we ate, my father cleared his throat. "I would like to say something," he announced formally. We all looked at him in surprise. Expressions of emotion were not his forte. "I have not always been the father I should have been," he said, his voice gruff with unaccustomed vulnerability. "Especially to you, Bridget. I favored Tyler. I dismissed your dreams. I said unforgivable things. I sat frozen, hardly believing what I was hearing. When you succeeded despite my lack of support, I was too proud to admit I had been wrong," he continued. "But I was wrong, and I am sorry." The room fell silent. Tyler stared at his plate. My mother reached over and squeezed my hand. "Thank you, Dad," I said finally, my voice thick with emotion. "That means a lot." He nodded once sharply, then turned his attention to his plate. The moment of vulnerability passed, but not forgotten. As I drove back to Portland the next day, I reflected on the long, complicated journey that had brought me to this point. The pain had not magically disappeared. The years of feeling unwanted had shaped me in ways both painful and powerful. But something had healed, or at least begun to heal. I had learned that standing up for myself did not mean cutting people off entirely. It meant establishing healthy boundaries. It meant requiring respect as a condition of relationship. It meant acknowledging that family relationships could be rebuilt, but only on new and healthier terms. My father's words from years ago, "No one wants you here," no longer echoed in my mind with the same power. I had proven them wrong, not just through my success, but through my willingness to help, when asked to offer forgiveness without forgetting to remain open to change, without compromising my worth. As I settled back into my Portland life, I realized that the lost daughter had not found her way back to a fairy tale family reunion. Reality was messier, more complicated, more authentic than that. We were all works in progress, learning how to love each other better one day at a time. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family that hurt you? Did it lead to healing or more distance? I would love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of healing and growth. Share with someone who might need to hear that setting boundaries can be an act of love, not just self-protection. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the strongest thing we can do is stand our ground while keeping our hearts open.